Hello and welcome back to the simulated 2024 F1 World Championship. This is round number 8 of 24, taking place from Monte-Carlo in Monaco. That's right, it's time for the race I've been dreading, where the barriers are mere one snap of oversteer away from wrecking my race. I fully expect this to be a disaster, but it would make for great viewing, unlike the actual Monaco Grand Prix, right? Here's how the driver standings shape up after last time out at Imola. Yuki Tsunoda retakes the lead of the championship, being the first driver to break the 3-digit point threshold, with Leclerc slipping back down to second. The three IRL champions on the grid take up the next three spots, with Hamilton in third, Alonso in fourth and Verstappen in fifth. Lando Norris takes up P6 with Albon just edging out Perez in seventh. Russell and Stroll round up the top 10. As for the constructors, the Cash Money team of RB have taken top honours, followed by Ferrari. The senior Red Bull team have slipped to third, with Mercedes and Aston Martin not too far behind. McLaren continue to occupy P6, with Williams still in P7 thanks solely to Albon. Alpine are in 8th with 34 points, with Sauber 6 points behind in 9th. Haas still bring up the rear with 15 points. Compared to the actual standings, Red Bull's stranglehold at the top of the drivers' standings has been broken by Leclerc moving up to P2 behind Verstappen, pushing Perez down to third. Norris hangs close behind in P4, with Sainz continuing to occupy 5th. Piastri is 40 points back in 6th, with the Mercedes pair of Russell and Hamilton taking up P7 and P8. Alonso slips down to 9th, with Yuki Tsunoda rounding up the top 10. As for the constructors, there's no change from before. Red Bull are P1, Ferrari are P2 and McLaren are P3. Mercedes pull further away from Aston Martin in 4th, with RB continuing to lock down P6. Haas remain in 7th, Alpine still have one solitary point in 8th, and Williams and Sauber are still to get on the board. Now it's time to find out who we will be racing as for the Monaco GP. With the current championship leader, Yuki Tsunoda, removed from the wheel, we are now down to 13 remaining drivers. Let's see who I shall be racing as around the streets of Monte-Carlo. And in a funny coincidence, the wheel selects Tsunoda's RB teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Ricciardo achieved his redemption day around Monaco in 2018, but can we add another victory in the simulated world, or will the Monaco walls catch me slipping? It's time for the Monaco Grand Prix. Alrighty then, here we are in the RB garage, invisible steering wheel in hand. I guess not in hand because it's invisible, so yeah, we're just going to roll with it as we start our first flying lap in qualifying. My first on-track action at Monaco for a while. I'm actually stuck between a few cars. I've got Red Bull in front of me, I've got Sauber behind me with a McLaren not too far behind them. Hopefully I don't catch up too far to the Red Bull in front, we shall see. As we skip to the end of the lap, nothing really eventful happening as we go towards the line. We actually did catch up to the Red Bull in front of us a little bit. Kind of put ourselves in the dirty air, but it's okay because we still end up P1 at the end of Q1, which means we're definitely easy through to Q2. In fact, we made it through by 6 tenths ahead of P2 there. As we lose from Q1, Perez, Ocon, Norris, Albon and Sargent. Norris and Perez being the two shocks being removed from the first bit of qualifying, and with it being Monaco, that is very damaging for them, being all the way at the back. As we move on to Q2 now, setting our Q2 lap here right at the end, and once again we make it through easily in first again. Seems like I do have some speed around this course. In fact, we're over a second ahead of Charles Leclerc in P2. As we lose from Q2, Lance Stroll, Zhou Guanyu, Valtteri Bottas, Nico Hulkenberg, and Kevin Magnussen. More normal removals from qualifying there compared to Q1, where we had two big shocks. Not many big shocks here, not even really any shocks from Q2. As we move on to Q3 now, we're going to go into our only flying lap in Q3. I kind of do the little risk here, but It's worked out so far. I can't imagine it won't work out here as we go through Sector 1 quite smoothly, in fact, as we set a Sector 1 time of 18.5, which is actually the fastest Sector 1 out of anyone so far. So we definitely got some speed around this track, which is interesting to say the least, because I never thought myself to be any good at Monaco. But here I am kind of proving myself wrong as I start going through the tunnel, heading down to the chicane. Heavy on the brakes. Make sure not to clip the inside wall. We did get close, but we did manage to make it through as we now head into the swimming pool section at the end of Sector 2 and into Sector 3. Remember, Max Verstappen had a mega Sector 3 here, as I cut the chicane a little bit there, but don't worry about that. But yeah, Verstappen had a mega Sector 3 IRL here last year to take pole away from Alonso, which was crazy. As we go through the final corners, heading down to the line. And we got pole position for the Monaco Grand Prix.
The qualifying finished, it's time to remind ourselves of our top three: Ricciardo, Fernando Alonso and Yuki Tsunoda. Well, that wraps up qualifying, but don't worry, we'll be back tomorrow as we head into the Grand Prix.
And we take pole position by quite a margin. We take pole position by 1.2 seconds ahead of Alonso. So yeah, we are on pole. Alonso's second, our teammate Tsunoda in P3. Good stuff for the RB team. Sainz in P4, Hamilton in P5, Piastri in P6. We got Gasly in 7th, Verstappen starting in 8th, Leclerc in 9th, and George Russell rounds up the top 10 there for Mercedes. So we start in the best possible position for this race. So now it's time for the Monaco Grand Prix.
You can feel the tension in the air as we move into race day here at Monaco. It's a track that requires the full concentration of the drivers with zero margin for error. It tests their skill to the absolute limits, so no wonder it remains a fan favourite. The prestigious Circuit de Monaco then is not all that dissimilar today to the layout that made its debut almost a century ago. It's 2 miles and 19 corners through the streets of Monte-Carlo, and although the average lap speed of around 93 miles per hour is the lowest of the season, the tiny margins for error make it the natural habitat of the safety car. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Daniel Ricciardo has a clear view ahead of him from pole position, and it's Fernando Alonso alongside. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Tsunoda, Sainz, Hamilton, Oscar Piastri, Gasly, Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell, Stroll, Zhou, Bottas, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Perez, Ocon, Norris, Albon and Logan Sargent. It's almost time for the lights to go out, so let's head down to the track where preparations are underway. And we welcome Anthony Davidson to the commentary box. Ant, what are you looking forward to most this weekend? Let's start by getting your take on Daniel Ricciardo.
Well, it was a really impressive lap in qualifying to get pole position, but are they going to be able to hold on to the lead into the first corner with so many quick starters around them? And apart from that, keep an eye out for anyone getting a good launch from the midfield. You see it happen from time to time, and it can really throw a spanner into the races of the quicker cars and push them into a more risky strategy.
So here we are then on the grid for the Monaco Grand Prix, starting from pole position, which is definitely very important for this race. Looking at our strategy, it seems like we got a long, medium stint first off, and then a short, soft stint at the end. Seems like this game is very optimistic about my tyre wear, so I decided to adjust the strategy a little bit. Maybe not going to work out like that in the race, but we shall see. I don't know too much yet. Looking at my fuel, I don't really know my fuel consumption. I mess around with the fuel consumption a little bit, putting a little bit more fuel in my car as we head off on the formation lap. 78 laps ahead of us. And we've got most of the field starting on mediums, only 3 people starting on the hards, with Alonso, Verstappen and Russell deciding to go with the hard tyres first. That could backfire for them going through the race. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We won't know until, well, later on in the race, really. Remember, this track is very very narrow, has a very narrow margin for error, so safety car could come out at any point, which could backfire on the hard tyre runners, or it could benefit them depending on when the safety car comes out. So we'll see what happens with those free hard tyre runners as we move onto the grid, lining up on our grid box. 78 laps ahead of us. Really not looking forward to doing 78 laps around this track, but nonetheless, we have to do it because the Monaco Grand Prix is this weekend. So, yeah. Also, this is the last race before the new game comes out. I've seen footage of the new game. Not very promising, so I don't know whether we'll move on to that game when it does release properly. We shall see. As we move up to 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for the Monaco Grand Prix. It's a bit of a tentative start for us, but we do get ahead of Alonso going into the first corner. As we see Tsunoda and Sainz already side by side into Sainte Devote, and Sainz actually making the move on Yuki Tsunoda. He was very optimistic, made the jump, and is now up to P3 ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Very optimistic start there from Sainz, and he has paid off for him. As we see some more cars in the background going side by side. This is Stroll and Russell. Russell trying to go around the outside of Stroll, which gives him the inside going into the hairpin, but he does backs out and decides to go behind. As we see Norris actually going side by side with one of the Hasses of Magnussen going on the inside of the hairpin, but he is on the outside coming around the next corner, but he does get more traction. Going on the outside into Portier, into the tunnel, and Norris actually makes the move stick. He's actually moved up 2 spots ahead of Magnussen and Ocon. Even Perez has moved up 2 spots. He's now up to P14. But nonetheless, we do maintain the lead. We've actually gained 1.6 seconds over Alonso already. And it's not even the end of the first lap, so we're already out of DRS range. Not that DRS means much here. But we have made a very, very promising start to this race. And, spoiler alert, not much happens for the first bit of the race. No overtakes at all, as we see Sainz still in P3 here ahead of Tsunoda. It's very much, I would say it's a DRS train, but it's not even really a DRS train. There's not many people in DRS range down the grid at the moment. And even if there is, there's not, they're like just under a second. So it's not really going to matter much with the one DRS zone, as we see Verstappen in P8, where he started. Still trudging along, not making any errors to Gasly actually. He's 3 seconds behind Gasly. Gasly has kind of pulled away from Max here in this race as we move on to lap 24. Still nothing happening, and we've already, and on lap 24, we've made up 20 seconds on Alonso. So our pace is extremely strong around this track. So it's looking like a bit of a shoo-in that we're going to win this race. So we're kind of doing the Verstappen of 2024 really here, even though we're playing as Ricciardo. As we see Alonso now coming into the pits on the hard tyres, funnily enough. Alonso being one of the first people to stop on the hard tyres. Clearly the hard tyres not really working out for Alonso, as he pits now onto, I think, our mediums. He expects the mediums to last longer than the hards. That is a very bold strategy. Let's see if it pays off for him. As he comes out of the pit lane, rejoining behind Zhou, it looks like. Although Bottas might get him here, maybe, and he does. So Alonso now out of the points-paying positions, stopping very early, and is now stuck behind the Sauber of Bottas. But he does have the much fresher tyres. He has just pitted after all, so he has got a lot more traction. He actually goes around the outside of Bottas into Sainte Devote. Going up the hill, he's now back into the points-paying position, so we could see some overtakes here from Fernando Alonso in this Monaco GP. And in fact, we do, as he now goes around the outside of Zhou in the other Sauber, which gives him the inside into the hairpin, and that allows him to easily pass Zhou and move up to P9 in this race. So Alonso making this Monaco GP a bit more entertaining with some fun moves around the streets of Monte-Carlo. As we see ourselves on lap 30, not really much to talk about, but I do decide, due to the tyre wear of my medium tyres, I'm going to change strategy. I'm going to go onto the hard tyres at the end of this lap, lap number 30. So we skip ahead to the end of the lap, and here we are going into the pits to make our one and hopefully only pit stop. We are 27.5 seconds ahead of Sainz. This should give us plenty of room for us to make the pit stop and still come out in front, providing nothing goes wrong with the pit stop. As we move on to the hard tyres, nothing wrong with the pit stop, thankfully. Ricciardo probably still has flashbacks of 2016 when the tyres weren't ready for him. Tyres were ready for him this time. We kind of have a little bit of a squirmy exit out of the pit lane, but we do keep it under control. We stay within the yellow lines, and yep, we are very much still way ahead of Sainz after the pit stop, which means we are pretty much free to go to the end and hopefully make this a very comfortable victory for ourselves. As we see Russell now down in P20, he has made his pit stop, so nothing too much to worry about. As he goes side by side with Albon going up the hill around the outside, which gives him the inside in the next corner, which hopefully should allow him to make the move stick, and it does. Russell up to P19, but don't forget he has pitted while a lot of people in front of him have not pitted. As we move on to that 39, we actually start hitting the back markers at the halfway point of the race, and we start lapping these back markers, starting with Alexander Albon in the Williams. So this is one of the few races this year, I think it might be the only race this year actually, where I've actually managed to catch up to the back markers as we lap Russell here, and we actually move on to lapping Verstappen, who I think is trying to let us through here, so I kind of died down the inside here of Verstappen, but Verstappen actually stays in front, surprisingly, going through the hairpin, going into Portier, and I died down the inside just to try and lap it. Eventually I do make the lap stick, but Verstappen not really making the blue flags easy for us there. But I suppose Verstappen isn't used to being lapped, as we see him now on the next lap going around the outside of Ocon there, going into the inside at the hairpin. And once again, he does make the move stick. He moves up to P16 in this race. He has pitted as well. So again, there's plenty of people in front of him who haven't pitted yet, so not too much to write home about there. As we see Alonso now still making up positions with his fresher tyres, doing the exact same move as Verstappen just did on Ocon there. And he moves up to P3 now in this race. He's just behind Sainz now in P2, so he will eventually regain P2. And he doesn't even need to overtake Sainz to do it. Sainz now comes in for his one and only pit stop. He moves on to the hard tyres, going for the last 27 or so laps. Definitely the safer bet. I'm sure the other medium runners will probably do the same as well. I doubt many are going to risk the soft tyres. I think people kind of overestimated how much the medium tyres were going to run, as we see Russell now in P12. And a puff of smoke coming out of his car as he enters the swimming pool section. Looks like Russell is going to be our first retirement of the race on lap 60. And indeed he does, as he tries to pull off in the safest possible way he can. That could be a safety car, considering he is in the line of fire. We did see Mick Schumacher crash heavily into that section not too long ago, but no safety car yet, as we see Alonso down that 70, who also has a puff of smoke come out of his car. Unfortunate for Alonso, he was running very well in P2, but nonetheless, it looks like his race is going to end agonizingly close to the finish. He pulls off at the end of the last corner. And Alonso is our second retirement of this race, moving Sainz up to P2 and Gasly up to P3. Gasly actually benefiting from the pit stops, moving up a couple of spaces into the podium places now with Alonso's retirement. As we get to the final lap, and yeah, we ended up lapping everyone on this track, which was kind of wild. I did not expect myself to have very good pace around this course, but I surprised myself. And we've ended up taking a very dominant victory here. It's actually the 8th different winner of the season from 8 different rounds. Ricciardo wins the 2024 Monaco Grand Prix. Very, very comfortable victory. And as I said, 8th different winner, 8 races. Can we break our 10 out of 10 record from a couple of years ago? Only time will tell.
It's the one that everybody wants to win, and they've only gone and done it. What a fantastic result here at Monaco. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
Well, they certainly stood out as a driver with tons of confidence on the track. I think their ability to keep their cool, even during some of the more hectic parts of the race, meant they were able to capitalise on the mistakes of other drivers, giving them the opportunity to make their way to the top spot with ease.
And look at this, they're coming out now. AlphaTauri had developed something of a reputation for forging exciting talent, and we can see that here. Incredible victory.
So there we go. Daniel Ricciardo takes another victory around the streets of Monte-Carlo. We have Sainz in P2 and Gasly, with a surprising podium for Alpine in P3, but I'm sure he won't complain with a P3 finish considering the state of their IRL car this year. As we have now completed a third of the 2024 F1 simulated season. Can't believe there's already been a third of the races done. And we've already played as both the RB drivers, which could be interesting moving forward through the season. So there we go, after 78 laps, Daniel Ricciardo takes the victory and the fastest lap, so he gets maximum points. And as you can see, we did lap everyone in the end. Carlos Sainz in P2, Gasly P3, Tsunoda in P4, Hamilton and Piastri finishing where they started in 5th and 6th. Charles Leclerc moving up to P7 in his home race. Stroll in P8, getting some rare points there for himself. Zhou Guanyu actually moved up to 9th, so very good result for him, and Verstappen kind of slipping back down to 10th. As for the rest of the finishers, Bottas was in 11th. Norris actually moved up from P18 to P12, so not a bad recovery drive from him. Kevin Magnussen P15, Perez in 14th, Albon in 15th. Nico Hülkenberg finished in 16th, Esteban Ocon 17th, and Logan Sargent once again is the last of the classified finishers in P18. And we had 2 retirements, which were Fernando Alonso and George Russell. And there we go, that is the Monaco Grand Prix done. Next race is in 2 weeks' time, which I believe will be on the 7th of June by the time the video comes out. It's the Canadian Grand Prix. We're going across the pond once again to the street, well, I say the streets, to the Gilles Villeneuve circuit in Montreal for our maple syrup filled race. I do like the Canadian tracks. I'm looking forward to racing around that one. Whether it will be on F123 or F124 is another matter. I still don't know whether I'm going to get the game. I've seen footage of the game and the handling model looks so jank, but I kind of want to play it because of the jank. I do get attracted to jank. So maybe it'll be an F124, we shall see. But don't be surprised we still end up with the modded F123 for the next race and beyond. We shall see. As for the driver standings, Yuki Tsunoda extends his lead at the top. He's now on 113 points. Leclerc holding on to P2. In fact, the top 6 remain unchanged actually. Leclerc in P2, Hamilton 3rd, Alonso 4th. Unfortunately, due to his retirement, he could have definitely leapfrogged Hamilton today, but his engine gave out on him. Verstappen sticking in 5th. Norris is still in 6th with no points scored today. Ricciardo jumping up to P7 now with 55 points. Albon moving down to 8th with 53. Still ahead of Perez though, who is on 52 points, along with Carlos Sainz, who rounds up the top 10, who's also on 52 points. As for the constructors, RB consolidate the lead at the top. They're now on 168 points. Ferrari in 2nd with 140. Mercedes actually leapfrog Red Bull into P3 with 116 points. Red Bull only scoring 1 point today. Very disappointing for them. They move down to P4. Aston Martin keep hold of P5. McLaren getting some decent points with Piastri. Still in P6, but are only 8 points behind Aston Martin now. Williams still in 7th place. Alpine, despite Pierre Gasly's podium, remain in 8th, but are only 4 points behind Williams now. Sauber still getting some points with Zhou, but are still in 9th with 30 points, and Haas still at the back with 15 points to their name. And there we go, that is the Monaco Grand Prix done and dusted. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave me a like. Make sure to subscribe. I'll be doing a video for every single F1 race this year. Continuing the season with the Canadian Grand Prix, as I said, in 2 weeks' time. And yeah, as I said, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you all for the next one.